Yeah, Rachel's expertise is pretty vast, and your experience is is down the line really of what we're looking at here, because of your the way you've tailored your approach, starting off as a PT and helping everyone, and then really narrowing it down and running. And then I've seen that you've done work with women as well, and been on courses and things to talk about menopause and how that fits into your whole approach. Um, so we briefly, I sent a message last week, or was it yesterday? I can't remember what day it is. It might have been yesterday, saying, what is it that you would really want to talk about? Because we can ask questions all day, and that's what we've done with the other speakers, and let that guide the conversation. But if there's something that you really, really want to speak about, and then we don't want to hold you back on that. And you mentioned about programming and training.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of obviously I want to talk about anything that hasn't been talked about. If there's anything that you want to go into specifically, but I think when I got into this, it's because I was sat on a course, a run technique course, about maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And the guy running the course said, obviously, that all training plans are written for men. And I sat there and I was thinking, I didn't know that. I was thinking, this isn't good because I write training plans for women. And then I couldn't concentrate on the course for the rest of the day, which wasn't about that, because in my mind, I was thinking, our training plans all written for men. Why is this? So as soon as I got home, I Googled, and then that's when I found Stacey Sims. And that's when I was like, wow, I can't believe this. So, my own training, and then I'm writing plans and charging people for this, and I'm not tailoring it specifically to women's cycles. And that's when I went and did Stacey Sims' course, and that's when things have dramatically changed in the plans I write for women, and then for myself and my own training, and that's influenced that massively. And that's why I said to you, I think that part is really interesting, the training plans and how we specifically tailor those to women. And then it's different, obviously, for perimenopause, postmenopause, and then women that still have a cycle but are getting symptoms of perimenopause, and then that's different again. So it's huge. And I never even asked people about their cycle 3 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But
Well,
yes.
that sounds great. We've not touched on really any kind of programming stuff specifically, have we? And I mean, yeah, shall we focus? I mean, I reckon other stuff will come up anyway. It always does, doesn't it? But we could kind of start with that and how it varies or it differs for each of those scenarios, and then digress from there if we need to. We might not need to. It might last all.
It could, yeah, it could well.
Fly past, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm quite happy with that being kind of like the intro, really. That's exactly. It's perfect. I'm going to try to get you to repeat it again, and I'll just cut off the bit from earlier. But Angie, do you want to give Rachel just a brief intro, like how you came across, how you met and all that kind of.
Sure.
Got history with her, haven't you? So it's
kind of. Yeah. So Rachel and I first met because I'd contacted her when I was about to change direction in my life, actually, in my whole career, and I was going to become a personal trainer, which was back in 2010, I think. So I'd contacted Rachael for some advice, I think, and also a PT session as well. And I was doing this with a few people to try and broaden my ideas of what PT was all about and exercise. And this was a long, long time ago when I was thinking, health equals exercise. And that was, that has changed an awful lot over the years. And Rachael has been part of that transition for me. And we stayed in touch over the years as we've both changed as well, in our careers, in our directions, quite a bit. And I've always kept following what Rachael is doing because similar kind of age, similar passion, that we are both runners, both enjoy that, both want to keep running. and we've both had things thrown at us that have sometimes stopped that, and we've had to change what we're doing and our approaches. We're very different people, though, probably similar values, but we work with people, similar sort of people, but in a very different way. So when we were talking about menopause and running, Rachel's name really was a big flag in my head. We've got to get Rachael on this to talk about it, because I know that her expertise around this, we need to hear it. And she's just as passionate as I am about getting the right information out to the right people who need it. Okay, so
I remember that first session in your garden. Do you remember it?
I do. I do,
No,
yeah.
we didn't have much equipment, did we? We didn't know each other. It was kind of so random, wasn't it, at the time?
Yeah, but it was good. It was fun. And what I wanted was to really see, like, what can you do with very little equipment? And I was fairly fit, but how are you going to push me? What are you going to do? And I wanted to see what ideas came up, and we worked a bit on various things. But yeah, it was really about expanding my ideas of what's possible, and I think that's continued. That's been a theme throughout. Yeah, and that's integral to all of this as well. Like, you don't need loads of equipment. You don't need a huge ton of space. You don't even need a gym.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I don't know, Rachael, do you want to just give us a bit of your background, like where you start? I mean, even the personal stuff as well, if it's relevant or you feel like you want to talk about it. But I usually find that once we get to sort of the stage that we're at, where you've been in the sort of, I'm going to call it the wellness or the fitness industry for a period of time, there's a whole journey behind that of usually stuff that's like, personal to you, but how you've developed and come to where you are and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. I started as a personal trainer back in Stoke, it was at the time, and I had a personal training studio there. And I played like football and squash were my main sports, and kind of not particularly running. And I just kept getting injured and injured and injured. And in the end, all I could do was run in a straight line. And that was the only thing I could do injured. And then I was like, oh, I quite like this. And then I got into running, and then obviously I started getting injured running. And I thought, like, oh, why is this? Why am I constantly injured? And that's when I looked up and found the running school in London. And I went down there and I did some courses on run technique. And that's how I got into the whole run technique side of it, because it changed everything for me. It meant then I could run, not get injured, and I could do many other things and not get injured. And that's when I started to narrow what I do from just personal training with lots of different people to running specifically. And then looking at run, that's why I do the run analysis now, and look at run technique. And then as I started to get a little bit older and started, like I said, I was on that course, and they highlighted that training plans are written for men, I thought I need to know more about this. And that's when I went and did the menopause courses with Stacey Sims, and the Women Are Not Small Men course. And that's when I started to then tailor my training plans a lot more specifically to women going, well, with a regular cycle, still pre-menopause, then perimenopause, and then post-menopause. So there's different branches to what I do now, but training plan wise, I would say probably 75% of the women that I write training plans for are in perimenopause or post-menopause, because it becomes a lot more specific. And that information, although it's changing massively, isn't still widely available in terms of coaching plans.
And are those training plans, are they running specific, strength specific, or both?
The ones I write, they're running specific. I don't go into massive detail in terms of the strength training, because there's too many people, and I can't write that. Well, I haven't got time to write the strength plans as well. I do teach online strength classes, but they're more generic. They're not specific to individuals. So it's more the training plan, and then I teach mobility, yoga, and strength sessions alongside that.
Right.
So I don't know if I answered all of that, but it was kind of, that's how it narrowed down into running, and then that's how it kind of branched out into more looking at menopause as well.
Right, I'm trying to think of, like, Angie, have you got a start off question here? Because
Yeah.
my brain's going all over the place right
I know, there's so many different Yeah, because
I could see you I could see the cogs wearing. I thought, oh, I should go first.
the turning. I'm a bit tired today, but they're still turning. It's a shame I don't like coffee. But I'm thinking the people that come to you for help,
Yeah.
do they talk about menopause, or do they just come to you saying, I want to run better, I'm injured, or help me do X, Y, and Z? Is menopause ever mentioned?
I'm just dying to dive in because you hit the nail right on the head. So people of a certain, say maybe like probably early 50s, I get a lot of women that come in and they book in for a run technique analysis with a view to doing a course on run technique. And then we sit down and I said, right, do you still have a regular cycle? Or are you perimenopause, postmenopause? And then I say, right then, tell me about your running. Do you vary it? Do you do speed work? Do you do strength work? And they're like, no. And then we chat more about those. I'm like, really, run technique is part of it, but really what we need to do is sit down and chat about your training plan and what you're missing, key elements that are missing. So quite often we change course. And we do a little bit of maybe run analysis, but a big part of what I then do is try and sit down and educate on how they need to change their training.
And how do they need to change the training? What's the sort of, I know that's like how long is a piece of string and everybody's different, but is there some kind of common themes that come up?
Yeah, so as women, we get better at endurance as we get older. And some people start to lose speed, which is why they come for the run technique analysis, thinking that the run technique will improve speed. And it does to some degree, but not if the other key elements are missing. And so what they start to do is go, well, I'm not as fast anymore, so I don't really want to compete at the 5K, 10K half marathons anymore. I want to run longer and get into ultra running because we get better and better at endurance. And there's nothing wrong with that. But what they stop doing is they stop doing the speed work and they don't do the strength work and they focus on the long, slow stuff. And that's why they're getting injured and that's why they're getting slower. So it's that stuff. And you can still do your long runs, but there doesn't need to be much long, slow running because we are better at that. So that's not what we need to focus on. The stuff that we need to focus on is the multi-directional stuff, the plyometrics, the speed work, the hill work, the strength work. They're the key components with a little bit of long, slow running, and the balance is just out.
And why do they need to focus on those key components? I mean, I think we probably all know the answer to this, but somebody listening is like, well, why? Why can't I just go out and run long distance? That's what I want to do.
I think a lot of, and you can, if it's working for you, this is where every individual is so different. And mindset plays a massive part of it. So if that they generally don't come to me unless they're getting slow or unless they're injured. I generally don't come into contact with them. So there's a reason that they come to see me. And quite often that long, slow stuff, it's a long, slow stuff that is very connected to cortisol as well. So there's all the issues around elevated cortisol, which can make symptoms, as you know, of menopause much, much worse. And that's the stuff that we're actually hardwired to do. We become better at using fats as fuel. We're better at endurance running. So it's not that needs to be focused on to improve performance. The stuff that we start to lose strength from 35 onwards, we start to lose strength. And if we don't work on strength, we're just going to lose more and more strength. And obviously that has an impact on power and on speed. And then there's all around the short, sharp stuff. We don't want to lose speed. And if you don't practice speed, you get slower. So you can't just focus on the long, slow stuff if you do want to get quicker. And then obviously there's all the issues around blood sugar control that high intensity work helps with, body composition, all those things that you probably touched on with other people is really important with that speed work as well. There's lots of different elements to it, but that's the stuff we get poorer at. And that's the stuff that women drop because they're not as good at it anymore. If they kept that in and focused on doing that, maybe, I mean, there's no reason that you can't get quicker. There's no reason at all. You can still compete as an athlete well into postmenopause. But it's just that stuff has to be in there. Otherwise you just start to lose it. I don't know if I answered that properly, but
no, you did. I just wanted to kind of get you to reiterate what you'd already said, which was why I think sometimes you can listen to these sorts of interviews and miss out on some really key stuff. And what you said around those key points, you know, the strength, the plyometrics, the speed work, the variation essentially in your training is hugely important. And yeah, so I wanted you to repeat yourself. So apologies.
And I know it was really interesting. I changed my training massively 6 months ago. And it wasn't on purpose. Like, I'd read all this stuff that we, you know, but I think we're, as runners, we're so hardwired to, we do the speed work in the week, we do our strength work, then we run long at the weekend. We must run long at the weekend, otherwise something happens. And I injured my back quite badly, so I couldn't run long anymore for about 6 months. So all I could do was short start stuff on the bike and my strength training, and I alternated those. So I dropped the long stuff, and then I noticed my body composition changed massively, and I was like, oh, this is interesting, because I never would have dropped my long run otherwise. And I was like, oh wow, this is really like, what's happening? I don't understand. And I was like, you do understand, you've read all the research, but you just were not willing to let go of that long stuff. It doesn't mean you have to let go of that long stuff at all, but it was just interesting that I massively reduced the volume of my training, kept in the intensity every other day, and that's not as much as I would normally do. So about a 6-month period, and my body composition changed because I wasn't doing as much long, slow stuff. And don't get me wrong, I wasn't doing as much as what other people do who are training for endurance events, but I was still probably doing more than I actually needed to do.
And when you say your body composition changed, how?
So I toned up, dropped body fat, and I think energy-wise, I felt a lot better, wasn't as tired, and that's all massively related again to the cortisol levels, you know, how much that can exacerbate perimenopause symptoms or menopause symptoms. And I think it's just keeping an eye on that. And I've carried that on now into my training. And although I will only now run long once a month for me.
And what's long for you, Rachel?
So I'm not talking massively long either. I'm just talking like 8 miles plus. So it could be like 8 to 12 miles. And when I'm writing my training plan for women in perimenopause and menopause anyway, I would only ever train long twice. So every 10 days or every 14 days, there'll be a long run if they're training for an endurance event. If they're not training for an endurance event, my conversation is, why are we doing long? And they're like, because that's what I've always done. It's like, right, and then let's have a chat about that. And, you know, even though I've done all the courses, it took me, like, I had to change it. I was forced to change it to actually see what's possible. And that's definitely influenced my training moving forwards. I just thought it was interesting.
Do you think, with the strength training side of it, do you think women have got a fear that one is going to slow them down, and potentially... I hear it so many times. I'm a former bodybuilder. It's not that easy to create muscle mass, and hormonally, we're not going to anyway unless we specifically train for that sort of thing. Is it that they don't, that they purely don't understand that as we're getting older, that we've got to train heavy and we've got to train fast, and that's the one way of staying young?
I think runners hate strength training. They just want to run. That's the problem. When they get into it, a lot of them really enjoy it and end up really enjoying it. I'm lucky that I've always loved strength training. But a lot of runners are like, well, I only have so much time, and why would I strength train when I can run? Because they believe in their mind that the running is going to improve their performance, or mentally they want to get out the door and run. They don't want to go to the gym and do strength training. And also, I think runners are sometimes a particular type of person who hate gym environments, just hate them, and are just solitary people that want to run on their own. So you've got all those different barriers to overcome. And I think COVID and doing online workouts did help a lot with that, because they can come on. Half of my like online sessions, the videos are I can't see the people. So I think that helps, you know. So there's a lot to overcome, and like you say, it's like I've tried to put on muscle my whole life, and I'm still... it's hard.
It's and I mean, I trained purely for that. I was a competitive bodybuilder, and I've specifically lost muscle now, and it's a lot easier losing muscle than it is gaining it, especially as we get older. Do you think also that, do you think if we actually maybe promoted the metabolic health side of it, of actually carrying a lot of muscle, the better, the more muscle mass we have, when we hit 50, then that sets us up, fingers crossed, it gives us a better chance as we get older.
Yeah.
I think that may be a message we need to send.
Yeah, definitely. And like you say, it's massive in terms of, you know, I don't think running is the best thing to change physiques, like, at all. I really don't. I think strength training and HIIT workouts and things like that are much better at changing body composition than running. My biggest barrier is runners love to run. That's what they want to do. And it depends, I guess, what perspective you're coming from. Is it to improve performance as a runner? Is it because I run mentally and I run socially, or is it because I run to change my physique? So many different reasons for running, isn't there? But I think educating around that massively, I think is lacking, and I think will help. I hope.
I actually, as I've been very sort of, I say to everybody, I don't run. I said to these ladies, because I don't run, so I just went out and did a 5K at the weekend just to see if I could do it. And I had my Vibrams on, and I run 5K, and I've absolutely no negative side effects. So I'm going to do that and prove a point that strength training, a strength athlete can actually go and run. I did it slow, but yeah, so.
No, so definitely. And like I say, now that I'm like, I vary my training a lot, and I'm not doing anywhere near as much long, slow running. I'm not any slower, or I've not lost any pace or anything like that. Any fitness for having made that decision. I just feel more alert mentally, body composition's better, and I have more time. But I'm not training for an endurance event at the moment. So runners that are training for an endurance event, we need to get that balance, and they do need to practice time on their feet. And it's things like, and you have obviously got to get all those different elements into the training plan and make sure they're alive at the end of the event. So that endurance run does need to be in there. We do need to practice, and psychologically as well. If we don't do that long stuff and they turn up to the event and they haven't done time on their feet, they're going to be like, hey, am I really prepared for this? So it's a balance, isn't it? It's finding that balance. But I'm a massive believer in strength training.
So talk to us about the differences then in women training at all those things you said. So perimenopause, menopause, still have a cycle, doesn't have a cycle. You know, you get the idea.
And also the fact that we don't always know when that cycle is when we're in that peri period. It's very uncertain, isn't it? It's not like for some women they still have it regularly. For others, just don't know when it's coming.
Yeah, and it's like I'm 47 in this year in March, early March.
Oh, me too. The 12th. When's your birthday?
6th. So I still have a very regular cycle. I can predict to the day that I'm going to come on normally, and symptoms haven't changed that much, although I have changed my training a lot, so you don't know how much of that has impacted as well, with a view to transitioning or in the early stages of perimenopause. But so for me, it's like so easy to write. My training plan is the same all the time at the moment. It's like those first 2 weeks of my cycle, hit everything hard. I recover well, sleep well, hit everything hard. 3rd week of my cycle, more on endurance work, tempo runs, a little bit lighter on the strength work. And then that week before my period is recovery week. And I won't have a conversation. I won't write a training plan for any female that doesn't know either their cycle or is not willing to talk about it, because otherwise it's like just writing a plan blind, and I don't like doing it. So mine's really easy at the moment, but I'm very aware and thinking, right, when my cycle starts to become a little less predictable, or my symptoms increase, or the last thing is I stop responding to my training plan as well, then I will think about transitioning onto a perimenopause training plan. And the way this looks is I do a 2-week build, what we call an anaerobic phase. So that's focused on high intensity stuff like short hill bursts, short interval runs, and then kind of 10 to 12 rep range strength training for 2 weeks. So we're hitting everything quite hard. Then I do a deload recovery week where it's just not necessarily massively lower volume, but just time on your feet, easy running, just chance to recover. And then I do the next 2 weeks what I call an endurance block. So we focus on more tempo runs, up tempo stuff. So not quite as high intensity. And alongside that, I'll do the 1 to 6 heavy lifting. So a bit more intensity with the lifting, a little bit less intensity with the running for 2 weeks, and then take another deload week. So there's a recovery week every 3 weeks, not like traditional training plans, which is every 4th week, which is more written for men. So that's the way I do it. What else was I going to say? Oh yeah, and my long run is once every 2 weeks or every 10 days.
And is that train, that kind of that's for, is that for is there ever an average recreational runner you get? Is that just for your average recreational, I like running, just try to manage, want to run, want to manage my weight perhaps, that's them? Or is, and I presume, and I'm assuming that changes for somebody who's training for a specific event?
No, that's right, from
that's everything,
yeah, all the way through. And also, like, some of the elite runners are training that way now, because Stacey Sims' research is now becoming more widely available and accepted. So yeah, it's going right up to elite level, and that's the way I would train all my athletes, regardless of what they're training for. You know, again, if they're not training for an endurance race, I may then not do the long runs. I may say, right, well, what's our focus? Is it getting faster? Is it body composition? Then we may tweak it in terms of the strength work and how many, you know, how much short, sharp work we do. Yeah. And then when it turns to like post-menopause, I'll do a bit more high intensity stuff post-menopause than perimenopause.
We touched on this the other day. We would, after one interview, we would, I don't know how it came out of my brain actually, the focus for women on high intensity interval training at menopause and beyond and all of can you talk about that for people who perhaps don't know what it actually is? I think I see people telling me they're doing high intensity interval training. I think, okay. And then the benefits and possibly the cons as well, if there are any from your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, so from a running perspective, the high intensity stuff that I will program will be anything from like, you do kind of your warm up, and then it will be the main body of the session. Doesn't need to be long, like 20 to 30 minutes maximum, really. And that can be a variety from Tabata workouts, which is very, very short stuff, to 30-second hill sprint. So 30-second run up as quick as you can, walk or jog back down, do that 10 to 20 times, and then nice easy run home. They're short sessions, like I said, 20 to 30 minutes, and they're short intervals, anywhere from like 10 seconds full intensity up to 30 seconds, sometimes 60 seconds. But the idea is it's as fast as you can, and then you either walk to recover or you jog to recover, depending on the session. And you're not out there. Some people think you're out there for an hour and then you just put in random short bursts and things like that. That's not true interval training. It gets you out of breath. You come home after 20 to 30 minutes and you're done. It's hard.
What are the benefits, particularly around menopause, for that kind of high intensity interval training for women?
So the idea is with cortisol as well. So with the elevation of cortisol, the stress hormone, with the short, sharp stuff, you still get that spike of cortisol. But as long as you get your protein, I'm sure you talked about the protein intake is so important with peri and post menopause. So with perimenopause, you need to get 30 grams of protein within 35 to 40 minutes post exercise, and that will bring the cortisol levels right down. And with post-menopause, it's 40 grams. So it's quite a lot to get in within a short window of time, but that will help bring down cortisol levels after a hard training session. But I digress then. So in the original question, so it helps with kind of managing stress, because you've got those that short spike of cortisol. As long as you dose it down afterwards, your body gets used to dealing with a little bit of stress. Whereas the long runs, it's just high levels of cortisol and a lot of stress. If you get what I mean, there's a subtle difference between the two. Then you've got the management of blood sugar levels with the high intensity interval training. And more than anything with runners, it improves speed as well. And that's what we're looking for, performance. That's what we start to lose. And it's the speed that's really important in terms of maintaining performance. Whether you're looking at 5K, whether you're looking at endurance, you still need to have some element of speed in there. and body composition as well. And it's that whole little thing. I think women get absolutely obsessed, and I'm guilty of it. I've done it too. Is like looking at your watch after a long, it's like, oh, 2,000 calories. You're like, I can eat what I want all day. And we know that it's not that. You're probably going to end up burning more calories the whole day if you do a 30-minute hard, high intensity interval training, because then you're burning calories at rest the rest of the day. And I'm sure you've covered this many, many times. So yeah, you might only see like 200 calories on your watch, but the rest of the day you're burning calories at a high rate compared to that 2,000 calories on your watch from a long run. That's probably just going to put you in a fatigued state for the rest of the day and possibly the day after. Very different.
Yeah.
Do you think as well, the with sort of like calories, I mean, it's like what I often say to my to the ladies that I train, what's a calorie then? What does it mean to you? They have absolutely no idea. It's like when you get on the scales, what are you weighing? You have no idea, you know what I mean? The fluctuations and stuff like that. But I'm very much into obviously power training and stuff like that. And I don't know if you have the same issue of actually trying to get women to eat enough protein. And the way I actually do it is say, okay, what would your ideal weight be? So I'll use myself as an example. My weight I can really maintain easily with no effort, 60 kilos. So let's say 500, so in pounds, 110. I would personally say that I need 110 grams of protein. As an estimate. If I'm competing in a bodybuilding, then I would be going, oh, my lean body mass is this. So then, that sort of thing, getting a bit more technical there. So how much protein do you tend to advocate for women?
2 to 2.4 grams per kilogram of body weight. So I'm saying
about the same,
60 kilograms is about my kind of weight. So yeah, looking at 120, which isn't easy. It took a bit of doing to start with. Thinking, wow, where am I going to get all this protein from? But it is so important. And when you look at it, they don't eat nowhere near enough to maintain what they're doing. So yeah, that's a big one to touch on with people. And also getting leucine as part of that. So 3 to 3.5 grams of leucine within that protein. And like I said, 30 to 40 grams of protein post run is a lot to get. But if you can get it, if you can time your training correctly. So I run specifically about 11 o'clock, because then I know that when I come in from my run, I can fuel them with my lunch, rather than having to snack, or how am I going to get in and having to rely on a protein shake or something like that. As long as I'm in showered, I know that I'm going to eat them within half an hour, and I'm going to get it from my natural food. I will take a protein shake. I'm not anti-protein shakes, but I try to get most of it from real food if I can. And also sometimes like a weekend I'll run straight after breakfast. So we've got protein within the breakfast. So then, because the training session's probably quite short, 45 minutes to an hour, I know that I don't have to then get the full 40 grams. I can use some of what I've had for breakfast and just top that up when I get back, and then eat a proper meal. So you can kind of have like half of the protein. Say you need to get 40 grams, you could have 15 to 20 grams with your breakfast. As long as the training session is under an hour, then you just have to top up with half within 40 minutes, if that makes sense. You don't then have to have the whole 40 grams afterwards. But that protein intake within that short window is really important.
And what happens if we don't do that? Why is that so important?
Fatigue, it's putting yourself into that breakdown state, that catabolic state. So we're wanting to get in cortisol massively. It's trying to bring those cortisol levels back down.
And fuel your body for building strength, if you like, or adaptation, rather than, like you say, being on that breakdown state. Again, we're all coming from a sort of PT trainer background, but again, your average person who's listening to this going, well, what does 40 grams of protein look like? What does that look like? And what the hell is leucine when it's at home? And where do I get that from? And can you give us some idea of what would that look like for your average person coming home and trying to get that level of protein down.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because I eat a vegan diet, so I try and what
I was hoping this would come up in conversation.
Yeah, brilliant. No, go down that route, Rachel, by all means, because I think more and more people are eating a plant-based diet, and I think they really need to know where they get that kind of level of protein from. I think it's vital.
Yeah, so it's things like, you know, like I say, the timing of my runs I'm really like hot with, so that I don't have to. If I had to, and I was forced to do a run and I couldn't fuel directly afterwards with a meal, then that's when I would go for a protein shake, and make sure the protein shake that you choose has leucine in it, the amino acid that's really important. And that's just for muscle resynthesis. It's really important for women to have that leucine. And so when you look at your protein shake, if you do use them, just check that it has 3 to 3.5 grams of leucine. But if it wasn't that, then say for my breakfast, say I'd add oats, and I'll put in hemp seeds, and I'll put in chia seeds and almonds and things that I know will have some protein in. I will use that as part of my fueling for protein. Then I'll go and do my run, and then I'll come back and say it'll be something like a 3-bean chili with a jacket potato or something like that, or it'll be tempeh with vegetables, because that's high protein. And it's things like getting your snacks as well, like 20 grams of protein snacks. So it might be an apple and some peanut butter. Trying to think what else. And it's surprising that when you look how many vegan foods protein is actually in. And you know, just like nuts and seeds, I'll add those to things, quinoa. But it's in like things like bread, you'll see protein. But it's that keep digressing from your question, but that is because I keep thinking of things. It's that balance of fats, isn't it, and carbs. Is trying to eat more of the good fats and less carbohydrates as we enter into perimenopause. And on a vegan diet, it's so hard there's carbs in everything. Like when you go for your protein sources, beans, there's carbs in it. It's hard. That's why we do have tempeh quite a lot with vegetables. And I try as we go throughout the day to have less and less carbs. So carbs are with your oats in the morning a little bit. So kind of before fueling for your training session. So eating your carbs in and around training. So if my training's in the morning, then my evening meal, I try to keep the carbs very, very low as they can be on a vegan diet.
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? Very tricky.
Yeah.
What you need.
Do you supplement with B vitamins and things like that as well?
Interesting thing with that, I did use to supplement with B12, and then I went to the doctors. I was getting dizzy, and my B12 levels were too high. So I had to stop taking the B12 supplement. But a lot of foods are fortified with B12. So I don't specifically take a B12 supplement now, but that's very specific to me.
I think that's because, bearing in mind, I eat red meat every day. Don't hate me. But yeah, it's and yeah, I have to take B12 because if it's a genetic thing, so I take B12 every day, and my B vitamins. I've had every test you can imagine. But what's quite interesting is what you're saying. I cannot train after food. I have to do all my training fasted. Even sort of now if I competed and I test my muscle, my ass and stuff like that, I never lose anything. So yeah, there is no way that I could go and do any exercise, even if I've eaten 3-4 hours before. I feel terrible. So it's again, I suppose it depends on the person's what works for them.
Yeah, I know something Stacey Sims is very hot on is not training in a fasted state for women. And she's a big advocate of that. So I'm kind of the opposite, but like I say, everybody's individual and you have to follow your own path with these different things. But I am a massive advocate of never training fasted, so the opposite of
I did a 72-hour fast and I'm still trained. But again, it's like that's right for me. Do I advocate that for somebody I was working with? Absolutely not. But it's sometimes if I use Megan Kelly as an example, she cannot train eating either. She has to do all her training fasted, and again, it's probably what we've trained our body to do. It's just very, very different, and again, our nutrition is very, very, very different.
Rachel, talk to us about why should women, and I say should, I hate the word should, why some women might not want to, let's think about Stacey Simpson. Why does she talk about not training in a fasted state? Because fasting is a little bit in vogue at the minute, especially intermittent fasting. So perhaps we could touch on that and pros and cons again, really. Everybody's different, we know that.
And when you look at when she presents the studies done on fasting for women, they were all done on men pre-surgery, men that needed to lose weight rapidly to get into surgery. And this is where the fasting studies were done, where the majority of studies are done on men. And they got good results. So from that, it was then put out into mainstream, and then it gets filtered into the fitness world. And then it's fasting is a great way to lose weight. And she's saying what Stacey says is that it puts your body into that catabolic state. You're then going out and pushing hard in that fasted state, and then you're never going to get out of your performance what you want to get. So then you're not getting your performance gains, and then you're in that fasted catabolic breakdown state. So it's not a good way, is what she's saying, to start your day in that fasted breakdown state. And it works well
wrong every day then.
It works.
And I'm certainly not catabolic. Again, it's horses for courses, and I think again, it's research is very sort of nuanced, isn't it? You get that one person's research, there's always something to sort of like counterbalance that.
Always an outlier. Yeah.
But
we've got to go with the hundreds of of people that Stacey's helped as well.
I'm not saying that. It's just I'm sort of giving a different and ask sort of like why, what are they seeing and what are they testing and things like that, and I mean I train a lady that I have her eating 5 meals a day with carbs, which so it's very, very different, and everybody's very individual.
I think you find your person, don't that you trust, and I think I trust Stacey's work because it's so heavily researched, and it's it's her massive passion. Because you look at all of the massive body of research is conducted on men, because they're so easy to study, because they don't have cycles, and they're not perimenopause. We're very complicated beings, aren't we, women?
Oh yeah.
Now, and it's people has pushed this forward and really pushed it, and times are changing, and things like what you guys are doing is great, and it is quickly changing, which is what we need. But I think her courses, when I did them, I mean, they're mind-blowing. They're so scientific. I had to watch them about 5 times to try and understand, because she goes so deep into the biology. And I think I'm very trusting of what she says, and the research that she's done, and the books that she's brought out are great. If you don't like science, you're probably not the one to follow.
I do all the science stuff. I love it.
Research then are a massive advocate of her work. Huge. So what was the original question?
Yeah, I was just
going back to
I can't
think
remember.
it was B vitamins and iron, wasn't it? I can't remember now.
Can I ask what protein kind of looked like? Then we just diverged from there, didn't we?
It's all good stuff, though. Yeah. All good stuff. And I'm thinking then, what perhaps has Rachel seen when she's learnt all this new information and started to adapt her way of working with and training with women going through.
I'll tell you what I wanted to do, is delete everything I'd ever put out there before.
Oh, really?
We live and learn, don't we? We learn things at different stages.
It's getting hot in here.
I know, I'm boiling. I never knew that all the training plans were written for men. And if you think how dangerous that is now, like, I mean, I put out a course maybe a year ago where I got a lot of junior young girls come in with their mums to listen to the course. And I thought, how cool at that age, when they're starting to compete, that they can now train with their cycle. And I look back at my training and think, oh my gosh, like, you know, I was probably pushing really hard when I should have been resting. And you know, but you don't know these things. It wasn't out there. And I think a lot of people, now the information is coming out, are very critical of coaches that aren't following this methodology. And I just say sometimes, just give them a break, because this is new. It's only filtering down into the coaching world now. It's new information for most of us. None of, I don't consider myself to be an expert at any level. This is all new information to me as well. And we are picking it up, and coaches are starting to ask questions now. We are starting to talk about periods and menopause. I couldn't have said the word period 3 years ago. I'd have cringed. It is changing. And I think I say to some people who I'm writing training plans for, and they have PTs that don't understand any of this, and I say, have the conversation with them. Just tell them, or give them Stacey Sims bucks, and just have a conversation that this is, you know, they need to understand how the cycle impacts women. But yeah, I mean, just getting like junior athletes now coming through, knowing when to push hard. And, you know, their mums are going, oh my God, it makes sense now why they had a bad week in the pool. It's like, yeah, they're going to come on their period next week. If you push them hard that week, and then you expect them to perform the week after, when they could be pushing hard, they're going to be so fatigued. And they're like, it makes so much sense now. They have the conversation then with their coaches and explain this. And most coaches are like willing and want to hear about this, but it is only now filtering out. So I think there's a little bit of patience with coaches catching up, but there's also, we need to know this. And I say, if you have a training plan, and someone writes a training plan for you as a female, and they don't ask about your cycle, and they don't ask whether you're perimenopause or menopause, there's something missing. It's a really important conversation to be had.
With the strength training, the Russians did actually many years ago acknowledge female cycles. So, you know, wherever they were in the cycle, to make this aware. So what I tend to say to ladies, if you don't feel like doing the heavy day, then go to the medium or light day. Or if you do feel okay for the heavy day, drop the reps. Don't drop the weight, drop the reps. So again, my training is very different. I train more strength, purely some strength athletes sort of thing. So if they were coming up and say it was something like a 1, 2, 3, I might even say just do singles, maybe the same amount of reps, and do the singles. Again, my training is probably very different. We're looking at 85-90% of 1 rep max sort of thing, that sort of thing, rather than dropping the weight, or go to the lighter day and then cycle the session in later on in the week or later on in the cycle. So what would you do with the strength training side of it?
Strength training, I'm very specific, like with like I said, I do that 2 weeks because I balance it with the running, so it's going to be slightly different. Training the women, and I do that first 2 weeks when they're doing the really high intensity running with like 10 to 12 rep range stuff. The third week, I will either focus on balance and core and technique and things like that, but it depends on that individual, because if they feel, because the volume of running has dropped and the intensity of the running, if they feel they can still do heavy strength work and they're not going to get into fatigue state, I'll still say lift heavy during the recovery week. It depends on the individual. But then when we get to the next 2 blocks where it's more endurance running, so tempo runs where the intensity isn't quite as high, then I'll focus on the 1 to 6 heavy lifts. But obviously we can't dive in there with people that have never lifted. I'm not no. Hey, go lift 1 to 6.
Most women will not be on the bar until I've really sorted the technique.
No, I know myself. I've done daft things, you know, trying to lift heavy weights. But, I mean, that's where we're trying to get them to. And you know, most women are like, what, 1 to 6, like that heavy? And that's an education, you know. And most runners don't have a strength train and don't have the technique, and they're tight. Most of them are so tight that you get them to deadlift with a traditional bar and their hips are so tight. Good things are not going to come of that. So So what did you ask, Angie? I'm not very good at following these questions.
I can't even remember. I'm thinking, oh yeah, here we go. It's coming back. Don't need coffee after all. With the changes that you've put into place with how you work with your clients now, with all of that newfound knowledge that you're just starting to integrate, how do you see your clients now adapting and maybe improving, hopefully improving? How is it changing their feeling towards themselves, perhaps their body, their training, their running, their performance? Are you seeing a difference now compared to what you were doing when it was one training plan for all?
Definitely. I think, like, especially with the women that have still got regular cycles, training to the cycle is revolutionary, just changes everything. That definitely. Perimenopause and menopause it's like it's hard work. It is trying to get women to change the training quite a lot. It's a process.
Yeah.
An educating process, and it's trying to get runners to run less and do less long slow miles is they don't then always willing participants. But I don't want to say, look, you follow my way or you don't do my training plan, because then I've lost them completely. So as sometimes it's a compromise, and it's a because they panic about weight loss, they panic about the calories on their watch, and they panic, and you've got to understand that and be understanding at the same time as trying to steer them to a different way of doing things. So if I'm like, if I can get one strength day out of them as a change, and then I can just start to integrate a bit of speed work and then gently push them that direction, then yeah, so definitely it's changing. And I think energy levels are much better training that way. And I think there's a certain amount of relief sometimes. Oh, I don't have to run long every week. Oh, I can still do it on just twice a month. And the results are great. The results are coming, the performances are there. And yeah, and women in their 50s, in their 60s are PBing still. So there's this thing that menopause has to be all doom and gloom, and it doesn't. It can be like a new lease of life, like a transition. It's like, I can't wait to stop having periods. They're a pain in the ass. And it doesn't have to. I know it, don't get me wrong, I know it's tough sometimes. I know people have real tough times with it, but it doesn't have to be. There's so much help out there and ways we can change the training. So yeah, definitely having an impact, a positive impact for sure.
Rachel,
yeah.
Sorry, you were talking about that the training plan and the 2 weeks going for it, the recovery, and that sort of fits in with what we know about cycles. Like you say, because my brain's going all over the place as I'm listening to you, and I'm trying to come up with questions. I might have missed this, but when they start not having a cycle, or the cycle's irregular, or post-menopause when they're not having a cycle at all ever again, how does that, do you still sort of stick to that same regime? Is it just, but then it really, I suppose I'm answering my own question. It doesn't matter, does it? Because you're not having a period, so who cares?
Yeah, and I think the tricky stage is that what Andrew touched on is like for me now, nearly 47, cycle's still regular. At what point am I going to say, right, I'm going to switch to this new style of training? Because the only difference really, because I've already increased my strength training, I do all the high intensity, the multi-directional work for bone density as well is really important. I do all of that stuff. The only real big change for me is going to be that I take a bit more recovery. So I recover every 3 weeks. I don't recover the week before my cycle. It's going to be at that point that I say, right, I'm going to switch over to take a bit more recovery. At the moment, I like training to my cycle because it works for me. The minute it stops working, the minute my performance drops off, the minute I feel like I need more recovery, then I'll think about transitioning to a 2 week on 1 week recovery training plan. But all the key elements were, and that's where I say in women at 35, I'm trying to get them to start doing their strength work now, so that it's not such a big change at perimenopause. You're not suddenly going to have to do loads of speed work and loads of strength work. It's starting to put that into place already. We should all be doing this multi-directional work. So for runners, running in a straight line isn't enough strength to cause a big enough increase in bone density to make up for the loss of estrogen. It's got to be multi-directional stuff in there. It's great if you're a squash player or I know, tennis player or something like that, but runners, it's everything's in one direction, which has its issues. So yeah, it's when there's 3 reasons. It's either when the training cycle your cycle becomes irregular, you have a loss of performance and feel more tired. You're not responding to your training plan anymore. And there was a third one, which, what was that? I did say it somewhere else. Yeah, that was when you would switch over.
Yeah. And do you find that it is mainly it's more people that are heading through perimenopause and menopause, you find that switch is more towards the rest and recovery as opposed to increase in load or increase in volume?
Yeah, definitely decrease volume as enter perimenopause and postmenopause, increase in intensity for sure. And again, you can't just go, right, for someone that hasn't done speed work for 5 years to suddenly like 3 times a week or 2 times a week. You can't do that. It's got to be a gradual increase. And that's why I don't want them to wait till they get to perimenopause. I want that speed work to be in there now. And that's surprising, like, because I get runners come through, obviously, the hub every single week. So many runners don't do speed work. It always shocks me, it always surprises me, because I think, oh, I thought everybody does speed work. So yeah, I don't want to have to wait till perimenopause to do that.
Again, given that we know what we're talking about, what for you, again, your listener who's going, well, I don't know whether I do speed work or not, or I think I do speed work.
Because I'm working hard.
I do my 10-mile run a little bit quicker, and whatever. I'm joking a little bit, but what is a speed session for somebody? And again, I know
an example, a really simple
example,
would be warm up at home, right? Runners don't do this, and it drives me mad. 10 minutes before you do anything. A warm up is not a gentle jog. Then you go out and you run easy and build up for maybe 10 to 15 minutes, just really easy pace getting into your run. And then you could do, for example, 10 times 30 seconds quick with a 30-second walk or jog in between to recover. And then you do a 10 to 15 minute easy run home. That sounds like, okay, so that's like maybe 30 to 40 minute session. You're like, because most runners think I have to be out there for an hour or I have to do 10K for it to count as a run. If you do that session properly, you will feel the fatigue from that when you get home. So it's got to have some element of, and I like things structured, faster running and then recovery, faster running, then recovery. That's what speed work is. But then it might be go from 30 seconds, or you may do a mile at pace and then a mile recovery, a mile at pace, a mile recovery, depending on what you're training for. So it's just faster bursts of running with shorter, faster or equivalent or something near equivalent recovery.
And that's going to vary depending on experience. So if you've got somebody who's, like you say, never done speed work, the speed element of it, how fast you go, is going to be relative to your experience and your ability.
Yeah, if I say go all out, they're going to hate me.
Exactly, that's where I was going. Yeah,
it's just like, say, start just a bit faster than what you would do now. Just put not all out, but just push yourself so that it's like just above like that comfortable feeling, where you'll be happy when this is over feeling, but you're not absolutely destroyed after one. So you can come home and function for the rest of the day, and then we'll build up to that. And it doesn't have to be running, it can be HIIT training like you guys, it can be with weights. It can be, I teach every Tuesday morning, I do it's called dynamic movement skills, it's called DMS, and it's just 15 minutes, and I'll tell you 15 minutes, I'm done. It's short, sharp, like 20 seconds of jumping forwards, 20-second recovery, jumping sideways, 20-second recovery, jumping backwards. So you've got all the multi-directional stuff with bone density, and you've got the stuff that's going to get your heart rate, and then we stop and recover. 15 minutes of that is going to make a big difference. 15 minutes a week, and that's a free session every Tuesday morning. I'm trying to plug it, but it's that multi-directional stuff, and so it doesn't have to be running based. It can be with weights, it can be lots of cycling. If you're new to it and you'd rather cycle than run, there's lots of different ways.
Yeah, good. Go on, Angie, sorry I cut you off.
I was going to say, for the average runner, I consider myself the average recreational runner. I run for my head more than anything, and I do other things to try and stay fit and healthy and stay well. And And I'm thinking, if there are people like me listening to this and they're thinking, I'm not really interested in doing any races,
Yeah.
doesn't matter if I don't get a PB on any distance. Why should I still be wanting to make these changes? Why is it still important for me to be implementing the advice that you're giving?
Because I feel like, and I don't race, I haven't raced for a while. I'm not bothered about PBs. It's nice to get faster, it is, but it's not, like you say, it's not the be all and end all. It's like, I love running, love training. I think because in terms of reducing the symptoms of perimenopause, for a start, when you train this way, it has a big impact on reducing the symptoms of perimenopause. And for me, longevity in the sport, and I think I want to be in the best shape that I can be, from a completely aesthetic point of view to being healthy from the inside, mentally healthy. I don't think for me running at a slow pace all of the time has all of those benefits as does when you introduce those different elements that work on many things other than just getting quicker. I see so many runners that I can't believe run 5 to 6 times a week, and to me I thought they are out of shape, I think, and I'm like, I don't understand it, because the one element of fitness is good, but there's so many different elements that need working on, and I just think from longevity, it's not, it's, we all want to perform at our best, I think, and most of us, and that doesn't necessarily mean getting a PB or coming first in a race. I think we want to be the best versions of ourselves, and I think, I don't know, if you're not bothered about that and you just want to run for the mental health of it, I think obviously that mental health is important then, isn't it? And I think you get more benefits mentally from including the other aspects of training within that. But we're all different. Maybe, some people float through this menopause thing and don't have any problems. And if you're out there running and you're enjoying it and you're not injured and you're happy with how you look and you're happy with other things, then why change it? Like I say to people that come for run technique, if you're not injured and you don't want to get faster, why are we looking at your run technique? Why? I said, we don't need to, because you're doing what you want to do. And it's the same thing, isn't it? I think.
Agreed. I think the other side of that, then the flip side or the other side of that coin is Angie said there, why I'm not interested in PBs. I'm running for my brain. I just want to get out there and run. Why should I do it? And then the other side of that is for somebody who is, wanting to excel, who is wanting to do the very best they can PB wise and enter some races and do well going through into menopause, and doesn't want to just write themselves off and go, right, well, I'm clearly not going to be doing X, Y, and Z anymore. This works for them as well. I'm not, shut up, Cal. There's a question in there somewhere. Rachel, you have to guess what that question is from what I've just said.
Yeah, absolutely. All those things are going to... there's so much to talk about though, isn't there? I know it's hard to focus in on one thing. Though all those things are going to help performance, absolutely. And I do come from an improving performance mindset, because that's why people are coming to me most of the time, is to either get faster or because they're getting injured. So I am thinking about those things constantly. So yes, absolutely, all those things will help with whether you're racing a 5K or whether you're racing 100 miles. So I'm writing training plans for both of those different types of athletes. All those elements are going to help with performance. But it's like you've got those two sides of the coins, haven't you? Because equally you're going to get people that, my hardest point is when someone wants to come in and they want to perform better, but they don't want to do those things. And then, okay, well, you've got to make a decision. You either do or you don't, and that's fine if you don't. Like, that's fine, but I can't do both.
I think it's that thing though, isn't it? With a lot of people, it's like, I want to improve, but I don't want to change anything. And it's like, well, so I usually just say, so you want to perform better, or you want to, most people come to me for strength and weight loss. And I think it's like that. So you don't want to change anything. So how do you think we're going to get you to where you want to be? What would you do in my position?
So as a coach, you become much more patient. You learn patience, and you learn to understand that everybody doesn't think like you think, and that everybody doesn't want the same outcome as you, even though they say they do. It's a conversation, right? Okay, because I need to be clear when I'm writing something. What are we trying to achieve? Right, be clear with me, and this is how we're going to achieve that. If you do want to do that, that's fine, but you have to accept that we're probably not going to do that. So let's form another plan. And it's those conversations, which why it takes a long time to write training plans. And people think you've got all these different 5K plans and you just give that person. You don't. They're so individual. And understanding that person, that mindset. I feel like I become that person when I'm writing their training plan.
I like the I tried a different approach with the last few people I took on. I go, what do you think you need to change? So you've told me what you want, but what do you think you need to change to get there? And most of them know exactly what they need to change to get there. But they're just hoping that I'm going to say it's something different.
It's something easier.
Yeah, you can't eat that cheesecake every day. No. I wish I could. I would love it. So.
It would be good.
There's always going to be some pushback, though, isn't there? When and I think we're not wired very well for change, are we? We're always very suspicious and not wanting to make, very resistant about those changes. But I think part of it is bringing out the benefits, bringing out the reasons why it's going to help us in so many different aspects of our lives, and having these conversations around it. That's I think part of why we're doing this, isn't it? And bringing these conversations to light to sometimes bring the subconscious out and not people to trust themselves as well.
Yeah, and most women, they're like, I don't want to do speed work, it's gonna hurt. And it's like, and when they actually do it, they come back, oh, I loved it. And you're like, oh yes, I'm so glad you loved it. Let's do it every week. Sometimes until you try these things, you don't know. And I don't know.
Trying something different is good. And I think as well, people don't know what they don't know. You don't know what you don't know, and until somebody points it out, and then you've got the option then to make your own informed decision about whether you want to make a change or not. And either way is fine. I think we're not here to try and dictate to anybody how they should live their life at whatever stage that is. I think for me, certainly, it was a case of trying to just provide people with as much information as humanly possible, so that they've got all different viewpoints. You know, Rachel, you were at pains earlier to sort of say, oh, you know, I don't want to be repeating what other people have said. Well, I think we should be, you know, if
we've all got our own ways of saying very similar
absolutely
things,
different ways of saying the same thing.
I think that's very powerful. I don't think we ever repeat the same thing in the same way.
No,
not exactly.
We certainly didn't go out of our way to try and find people that agreed with what we thought about things, or you know, literally I've been approaching people that I don't even know, just based on the Facebook profile and their Facebook page, you know, that says what they do, with a view to finding people with different viewpoints, because it isn't all about what we think. It's like Claire was saying earlier, you know, everybody's an individual. Just because one thing works for somebody else doesn't mean it's going to work for them. So the more information you've got, the better, really.
And I think, like we said, we've got different unique journeys to the you know, similar points sometimes. And I'm writing a training plan for one person for 100 mile who doesn't really want to do much training, and then you've got another person who wants to train 100 mile and wants to run long. Psychologically, they need to. You're looking at things and thinking, oh, how's that person going to do that on that little training? And then you're like, you sure you don't want to do a bit more? They're like, no, I really want to do that little training. Okay. And then they go out and they smash it, and you're like, wow. And so that's where the psychology, and obviously you're going to guide these people the best you can, but the psychology of what someone thinks they can achieve on a certain type of training compared to somebody who's gone down a completely different path and different experience with their training, it's so interesting to watch as well. And that's where we give information out and people take it and interpret it in different ways. But what people believe they can do and what they want to do is so powerful. So we're here to guide and then watch some of these journeys unfold. It's fascinating.
I think as a coach as well, and you'll have the same thing, what you start somebody off at, and then you start to think you're not genetic, you know, you are more a power athlete is like to say I'm doing a strength training program, and they at the heavy weights I have to drop the reps, and but at the medium, the 65-75%, they can absolutely bang out a load of reps. Yeah, sort of like, say if I use myself and one of my friends that I train, I can, on the power, when I'm training, I can, at the 85%, I can do pretty high reps. You take me down, my reps die off, whereas she's the complete opposite. So again, everybody, it's when you work with an individual, how much as coaches do we learn off the people that we
massively
coach? And I think there was an arrogant message I got through from a guy, and I go, but I learn off my students. And he said something like, and he went, you can't learn anything off your student, you're the coach. And I was like, oh, that is one arrogant statement to actually make.
Yeah, very much so. There's so much to be learned. And I love every Tuesday and Thursday I spent writing my training plans all day long. And I get people to write comments so that I can understand where they're coming from. I don't want to just see they've completed a 5 mile. I want to be like, well, how did that feel or whatever. And you step into their mindset, and it's so different from the next person's training plan you do. And you are influenced because you see what they've achieved, and you think, wow, that's really interesting. And you learn so much. Like it is a very kind of narrow mindset to have.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, that's interesting.
I don't really know what to say about that.
Look, Rachel, I'm conscious of your time. This is quite possibly the longest interview we've done, which is not a criticism in the slightest. Far from it. I think it's another one where we could probably continue talking all day. Is there anything that we've not dragged out of you that you wish we had asked?
I don't think so. I just think there's key elements that need to be in the training plan, I think, to get through I shouldn't say that, to go through perimenopause and menopause in the best possible way we can, to get the most from it. I think there's certain key elements that need to be in a training plan, and there's so many fun ways and different ways to play around with these different elements, and I think it's worth reading around and understanding why we want to do those, and understanding what you want to get from your training plan, and just being aware that just running sometimes isn't the best option, and to just explore it, I guess, and just think outside the box a little bit about other things, and think about the main things for me are strength, interval training, plyometrics, which is jump training, and multi-directional training. And then think about, maybe, do I need to run along every week, or could I run every other week? Will I benefit and feel better from it? Because we don't want to run ourselves into the ground. We want to feel better for doing it, not get into a fatigued state. And we do need more recovery as we transition through these different stages in our life. And we can become better athletes, and we can become better performers. And I think it's an exciting stage. It's not necessarily all doom and gloom. It can be tough. There's tough things, parts of it, but there's also stuff to celebrate and explore, and think of your potential, still chasing that potential. So that's what I think at the moment. It might change in a year.
And that's fine. And that's okay, because we're always learning and growing. I think that's a brilliant place to end it, on a really nice, positive statement about it's a journey, not a destination, really.
Absolutely.